Hey Gators! Well, it's been a pleasure. You made it! Very last video lecture of the entire course. So this is Module 6, Part 7, and we're going to be kind of wrapping up with some of the takeaways we get from Chapter 11 in the Surrett text. So it's been a pleasure, and I hope you enjoy our final look at some material that we're wrapping up the class with. So here we go. This is what we're going to cover. We'll talk about two postulates of media and crime and justice, mediated reality, the future of media and crime and justice reality, spectacles versus surveillance, mediated criminal justice, and do a mini review of what you've learned. So these are the two postulates mentioned in the Surrett text. First, we have postulate 1. Really, the media, more often than not, construct the criminal justice system and its people negatively and as ineffective. Yet the cumulative effect is support for more police, more prisons, and more money for the criminal justice system. So this is really interesting. So think about it. It's painted in a negative view, ineffective, don't care about their jobs, corrupt, some of these messages we've studied over the past semester. But what's interesting is it kind of says that we need to do something about it, so this is how we should fix it. So we get this crime control orientation, and you've studied crime control before, but essentially these messages really ask for the criminal justice system to be bolstered and supported, but the way it's bolstered and supported is front-loading. So that basically makes the campaign for more law enforcement. It's the way to improve it. We need more cops, as compared to a more inclusive focus on courts and corrections too. So there is a consequence to this. If you think about it, if we front load the system on the law enforcement side and ignore the courts and the correction side, we'll have a crisis on our hands. Ask anyone in law enforcement, that would be so crazy. Where are we going to put everybody in an overcrowded jail? What are we going to do when the court becomes overburdened? It's just not wise to pursue that route. Not that, we couldn't use more law enforcement, but we don't want to completely front load the system and ignore the others. Okay, so this is what I find is a really interesting postulate by Surrett. The second postulate is this, and to me this is the more important one out of the two. So postulate 2 is that media organizations have increasingly blurred the line between news and entertainment, between fact and fiction. In the process, crime stories have become a mainstay of hybrid infotainment programs and new media content. So important, we're going to say it one more time, but quicker. Media organizations have increasingly blurred the lines between news and entertainment, between fact and fiction. In the process, crime stories have become a mainstay of hybrid infotainment programs and new media content. So this is a big deal, that we can't tell the difference between a viral video and an actual news report of something going on in our community. So again, we have 24/7 programming, and that programming finds exaggerated and dramatic scenes to become interesting to the public. Okay, because if you are programming and watching and posting and viewing and filming all the time, you're going to have to edit out some of the reality because it's boring. No one wants to watch paperwork. Nobody wants to watch downtime or waiting for the judge to say something or whatever. That's all going to get edited out, even though those are important parts of the process. We also have a competition for viewers where we process information through an entertainment lens. Because there's so much information being pummeled our way and so much we have to consume, we have to make choices about what's relevant, what's interesting, and what isn't. And these choices are worth a lot of money, a lot of marketing, and a lot of research goes into our preferences so that we can be catered to and marketed to and pushed toward more and more media that we favor and that we prefer to see. But this entertainment competition starts to ask some ethical questions about what entertainment is. When it's make-believe or, Hollywood or, pretend or some fake image, it's one thing. But when we move into reality TV, courtroom television, documentaries, and some others, that's another. I mean, those are real lives and real people, but with a lot of editing going on. So we have to ask ourselves what's appropriate to be consumed and what it means if we start consuming inappropriate things for our society. A result of these postulates are a few different kinds of things. So one, we get a big disparity between the real world reality of crime and justice and the media-constructed world of crime and justice. So what does this sound like? Yep, it's backwards law. One more time to get backwards law in there, but it really is a core concept of this class. So this really says that what's portrayed is the opposite of reality. It's inaccurate, highly inaccurate. It is pervasive across all genres, across entertainment, film and television, news, both print, radio, television media, and social media, and infotainment, right? Dramas and other things. So all criminal justice areas are affected: courts, crime, criminals, corrections. Another result that we have is that media are socially aggressive. They go after stories in ways sometimes that aren't appropriate, and they're fiscally conservative. So just remember, reality TV is relatively inexpensive to produce and edit. You're not paying actors high salaries. You're not paying script writers. You're just paying editors and camera people, and that's it. Most people want to be on TV and will do so for free, okay? Media have also become kind of redundant, and any successful content will be copied and reproduced because somebody out there wants to see it or hasn't seen it yet. But then we also, past the redundancy, get into what we call boundary pushing, where we're constantly competing for viewers, upping the ante, pushing for more extreme, pushing for more scandalous, more violent. And again, that's an ethical question we have to ask ourselves. So there are images, media content, things we view, consume, and see that really support particular policy choices. And we talked about this not too long ago. So why do we accept this, that media has this role in our lives? Well, we also know that cultural forces also contribute to the social acceptance of the media images. And people can force a video that has gone viral to be removed from the internet. They can use media to push forward a movement that says we shouldn't do it this way anymore. We also know that media does entertain and comfort us. And Surratt talks about this in chapter 9, also chapter 11, predator icons, catching the bad guy, the satisfaction we have when justice is served on a TV show. We do also see expanded public access, making us think that we're actually getting more information. So remember, this is generational too, where some of us were born with the internet and others were not. Some of us have been using smartphones since the early 2000s. Others just got one, okay? So, really we're getting a very narrow construction of the world if we're really dependent on new media and digital media to give us all our information. And we usually have to do a lot of fact checking and searching across multiple genres, formats, and fields to really get a sense of reality and accuracy. And really some criminal justice areas we know are very hard to access, like corrections or the court. They can be very closed, and if you don't have a purpose for being there, you'll be asked to leave. And we have security issues with corrections. We don't let everybody in there. So we rely on alternative experiences and alternative images to constructing our sense of what they're like and what they're about, even though they might not be accurate. Our brain accepts this because it's better than nothing. We do the same thing with stereotypes. Sometimes we don't have accurate information about something, so we rely on a stereotype because it's a shortcut. So our brain doesn't have to think as clearly or as hard about something, and we can just go to some easy to think of conception, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on it. Even though it's inaccurate, it's stigmatizing and sometimes destructive. So mediated reality, what we mean to, or which I should say Surratt is referring to, is that it's the most critical issue in media, and this is media's role in the social construction of reality. So this goes back a lot to chapter 1. It really affects the ways in which the audience perceives, interprets, and behaves toward it. So we've all probably had the experience where we looked at a post or a video or a story or a TV show or a movie, and it left us feeling a certain way or thinking a certain thing. It might have been a fleeting thought, but some of them can be actually a little more lasting than that. And some of that lasting effect is due to looping, okay? Reciprocal feedback models where we get constructed that image over and over again. It starts to become more permanent. And social media plays a role here with sharing and dissemination. Media-generated reality loops and interweaves with non-mediated reality. And so sometimes it's hard to say what actually is reality. Is this perception or interpretation, or is this really what's going on? And really there is a lot less distinction between entertainment, infotainment, and news, where again it's hard to identify what we're actually watching and hold certain standards against it. So we come now to the future of crime and justice reality. So there are two possible futures that Surratt talks about. He says we're either going to become spectacles or we're going to come into a surveillance culture. Spectacle meaning we're pushing those boundaries constantly, where we always want to be seeing the most dramatic, the most sensational. And then the surveillance meaning we become a society of cameras, where we're always watching over our shoulder, and we start to compromise our privacy a little bit. We also have to think about what this means in terms of the media landscape, where we see debates about free media versus restricted media to government use, or even just regulated media. We ask questions about what responsibility different platform owners have to take down inappropriate images, stories, and videos, what responsibility Hollywood has in rating movies for audiences as appropriate or inappropriate, or maybe relaying constructions of crimes that could be copycatted. We ask questions about responsibility for schools, for hospitals, for courtrooms, for churches, in how media is used in their environments, and how much safety we should expect, what security we should expect, what privacy we should expect when using their networks and on their turf. So it's pretty interesting to think through a lot of these things. But really overall, given what you've learned, what do you see as a future direction? There are plenty out there. This is rounding off our discussion, but mediated criminal justice tells us this, that really the media not only has the potential to change people's perceptions of reality, but it can also change how law is enforced and how we understand and react to crime. There are positive things we've gotten out of this. I don't want to end with doom and gloom, right? So we get reflections of reality, and we become reality producers. I know many law enforcement agencies that use social media to do crime alerts, or actually do tip lines and Crime Stoppers type work. We can get evidence from social media for the court. Crime can be media-related crime. It can develop new crime, and that's not to be celebrated, but we can use media to catch them sometimes. It also relates to policy. As far as how people think about policy, media can impact policy for the better or for the worse. And there are some people that argue that maybe the way that we've changed showing inmates on TV and in movies has maybe made inmates appear more sympathetic, and therefore the public more sympathetic to reforms about corrections. We also talk about actions of legal actors, the ethics of the attorney in using social media as evidence, in vetting out potential jurors. We talk about juries. We've already talked about pretrial publicity in this class and how it could very much impact the fair and impartial jury for a trial. And we also finally end with legitimacy of the law, our sense of what's fair and what isn't, and our acceptance of that law. Ultimately, social construction competition is ongoing, and we're constantly framing and changing and constructing our sense of reality and what's real. So this is our very last slide in the class. I want to talk about what you've learned. Overall, you have learned, if someone were to ask you, hey, you took that media and crime class, what did you do in there? You could tell them, I've learned about crime and criminal justice institutions and policies and how the media impacts them. How it affects attitudes and behaviors about crime, criminal behavior, and criminal justice institutions and policies. You studied the CSI effect. You studied pretrial publicity. You studied wrongful conviction. You studied how crime fighters are portrayed, and looking at mediated shows, right, and policy. We've also used media to understand our sense of constructing reality, more specifically our sense of law, crime, and criminal justice. Hopefully by the end of class you've become an intelligent media consumer, right? So now you're a little more aware and more skeptical of what is being shown to you, and you become better at consuming it and making choices for yourself. And you've developed a critical lens to say, wait a second, is that someone's perception of reality, or is that reality? Am I being shown a bias, or some kind of swayed version of this, or is there more to the story? And if I need to get more to the story, where can I go get it? To make sure that you're doing your fact checking, that you're really critically looking at what's being shown to you and making sense of it. So all in all, thank you for letting me be your professor this semester. It's been a pleasure. I want to take this moment to congratulate our graduating seniors. Yay, you did it. You're officially a Florida Gator alumnus now. You should be proud of yourself. And for those of you moving on next semester, hopefully I'll get to see you in a future class. At the present time, I currently teach a class on terrorism, and I teach a class on research methods in criminology. I'm looking forward to teaching more classes as things change, but I hope you've enjoyed this journey that we've had and the films we've seen and the assignments we've done. Hopefully you can use them in other classes, maybe as topics for papers. But ultimately, it's been a pleasure. And for now, I'm going to say good night and good luck.